official podcast. We are your hosts. I am TJ Kern. That is my buddy Blake Hartsfield. As you can see, there are three of us this week. Friend of the program and number one broadcaster in the Big 12. If you ask this guy, that's ESPN's Ted Emrich. Ted, how you doing, buddy?
TJ, you're too kind, man. That's absolutely not the case, but I will take it. I appreciate it. It's such a fun league to cover. I'll tell you that, and always a fun time to make it out to Lubbock for hoops or for football.
Yeah, and let's start there. You got to call your first football game this season out in the Jones. What was that like, and what was the atmosphere like there for that one? And compare it to the atmosphere of being in the USA.
Oh man, well, and it was the first game after they had poured the hundreds of millions of dollars into the facility, and you have the new end zone and the new position for the double T, and just looks incredible. And of course, Texas Tech comes this close to tripping up against Abilene Christian in that game. I mean, you get assigned a game like that, you never expect the game to be that good. I mean, it's no matter how good really any FCS opponent might be, they're still from the FCS. I mean, and it's not like North Dakota State was showing up to Lubbock. It's ACU, and yet with all the players, and listen, we talked about it during the telecast, and probably much to the chagrin of Tech fans after a while, like, yeah, there were a lot of former Red Raiders on the roster, and it's a storyline, and we got to cover it. That had that team so juiced up to go into Lubbock. And, the fact that it became a great game, you're just trying to document it and have fun with it, roll with it. And credit to Tech for coming out on top and eventually taking care of business. Like, I'll never forget, Joey McGuire's the look on his face at the end of the game. It's that sigh of relief. You're not celebrating, you're not storming the field after that. Like, thank goodness we took care of this one. Probably going through his mind, but no, it was a really good atmosphere. It was a great crowd for a season opener. I mean, like you'd expect, no matter who they would be playing. And I mean, anytime I head out to Lubbock, it's a privilege. I love doing games out there because no matter now having experienced a football game there, and now a number of times for basketball as this program has ascended, it's one of the best environments in all of college sports. I mean, I put it up there with any place I've been to. I think I've told you guys before, I've had the good fortune of calling games, a game at Cameron Indoor, a game at Allen Fieldhouse, the kennel at Gonzaga. Texas Tech is special, man. And I was there for Chris Beard's return with Texas. And I put that crowd up against any of them, for any game, at any time. So yeah, Lubbock is awesome. Always a treat to head out there.
I'm glad the football team found a way.
Go ahead, Blake.
I was going to say, I'm glad the football team found a way to win for you, Ted. I remember that one. We were frankly lucky to win that game by stopping a 2-point conversion of all things at the end of the game. So that would have, to your point about Joe McGuire was breathing a sigh of relief because the pitchforks and torches would have been out had they not come out on top of that one. So anyway, go ahead, TJ. Sorry to interrupt you, man.
No. You're good, man. Hey, but I was wondering how much attention you're paying to this oil money that's being thrown around out there in the 806 and the transfer portal.
Yeah, hey, pay attention to Cody when he says something on X or Twitter, right? I mean, he's not lying. He's writing the checks, and you see the product. I mean, I can't wait to see how it all comes together in the fall. And I'd obviously love to see that team again, like I got to see this past year's team in week 1. You have to take notice. I mean, this is where college football is. It's not where it's going, it's where it is now. And can everybody else keep up? The one cautionary tale, as we all understand, is college football fans is Florida State. And do the pieces fit? Do you hit with your evaluations? Listen, I trust Joey McGuire, and maybe I'm biased. I have known Joey for a long time, going back to his high school days at Cedar Hill. I think he is the fit there. I think it's going to work. I think that they are going to continue to climb. I think he's the right guy for that job. And I think he has surrounded himself with the right people. You're throwing money around again. I don't think it's just haphazard. I think they've done their homework, done their evaluations, and now it's about chemistry and making sure that it all comes together in the fall. But can't wait to see how that all comes together.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. Definitely what Cody was able to pull off and what Joey was able to pull off with that transfer class has got everybody pumped up and ready for a football season. And to your point, it can go one of two ways, right? You can go the Florida State route where everything falls apart and it looks like a dumpster fire, or it can look like Oregon, right? With what Dan Lanning did. And they're the best team in the country now. They had a bad game against Ohio State, but they were number one all year with a transfer heavy team. So
Sure.
kind of changing gears really quick here to kind of switch over to this basketball, because that's the season that is currently going, and we're coming up on March Madness. I know you've seen this team a couple of times. You've called them a couple of times this year. What stands out to you about this Tech team that makes them special? In my opinion, I think that they're probably the second best team that we've had in this run here in the last 7 to 10 years, other than the team that got all the way to overtime in the national championship. And jury's still out to what this team can do, but just the balance, their offensive efficiency. What is your takeaway from having called them a couple times, and how do they stack up against other Tech teams you've seen?
Man, the first time I saw them, I wondered, okay, what is the ceiling for them? They lose to UCF in the conference opener. They couldn't stop Darius Johnson or Keyshawn Hall. And, just to see the growth over the course of Big 12 play has been so impressive, especially on the defensive side. We know how gifted they are offensively. And to your point with the offensive rating and Ken Palm, and I mean, the metrics loved this team well before the voters in the AP poll did. Like the computers saw this coming.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something to that, even though there was no true signature win in non-conference play. They are well put together. Love Grant McCasland. The emphasis on defense, even though he understands his personnel, and it's not going to be what he had at North Texas, where they would grind you into dust. The fact that there is buy-in now defensively, you see it on the court and in these signature wins that have come in Big 12 play. As McCasland has said a few times, they're embracing the scrap. They're just that dog mentality in these games that matter. You at Houston and JT Toppin is out of the game and McCasland gets thrown out and you still win. Who wins at Houston at full strength?
No one.
And Tech still comes away with a win despite all of that. That told me, and I was feeling this already. I saw them 3 times early on, the win at BYU and the win over Oklahoma State at home. I think they're Final Four good. I really believe that. To dovetail with your point, Blake, about the 2019 team, they are absolutely second weekend good in the tournament, and I think they're Final Four good as well. Yes, it depends on matchups, and Lenardi has them as a 3 seed right now, and at the moment, the lowest ranked of the 3 seeds, if that makes sense. Basically,
Yep.
The number 12 overall team in the field. Hey, you stack up some more wins, have a nice run in the Big 12 tournament. Where does this thing end up? I mean, I think it sets up so well for them because, yes, they've embraced a defensive mindset to go with the firepower that they have offensively. And so many pieces, they are not reliant on just Toppin inside to muscle his way to buckets, show off the skill, all of that. Yes, McMillan, yes, Hawkins, if he can hit from the perimeter consistently. I mean, Christian Anderson, my God. I'll tell you a quick story. I saw
Not a
Christian
freshman.
Anderson, man, I saw him last year at the Hoop Hall Classic. So this is one of the high school events that I do for ESPN. And of course, Christian Anderson spent his time at Oak Hill Academy, the legendary high school program. It's produced all these McDonald's All-Americans and top recruits over the years. And Anderson was one. At the time, he's committed to Michigan because Juwan Howard is still the coach. And I remember the game that he had. It's one of those players that when we do these high school games, you just file that name away. Like, okay, there's and you're seeing a lot of top recruits, but there was just something about him. When you read up about him and his history with the German national team at the youth level, and of course his dad playing overseas, it's like, okay, there's something there. And then you start to read like, oh wait, he ended up at Tech. Oh, that's right. And you dive in, getting ready for the games that we do, and the fact that Grant was so impressed with him early on, like right away in the summer, that this is not your typical freshman. And in an age where freshmen's impact outside of a select few are so diminished because of the emphasis on the transfer portal and getting old and staying old, and with freshmen it just takes time, and there's no room for you. Like Christian Anderson forced his way into the rotation and into the lineup. He's that good. And I just love seeing that story unfurl over the year. And man, just the fact that you have an X factor like that come tournament time, where it's not, okay, I mean, hey, we go as Chance and D5 and JT Toppin as they go, and if they're not on, well, we're bowing out. If you're a Tech fan, no, there's more pieces. I mean, even Kevin Overton. Like, I love how the roster is constructed. I love the balance, and they're dangerous. Bottom line.
Yeah, and Christian Anderson, Blake and I each pick a guy each year before the season starts. Surprise, surprise. Chance McMillan was my guy last year. Christian Anderson, my guy this year. I love the shooters, love the playmaking, and you're absolutely right. Christian Anderson is balling right now, and he is a huge X factor on this team. And one of my favorite things, Ted, is the fact that exactly what you just talked about. You've got about 6, 7 guys that can get you double digits on any given night. And I think that balanced scoring is really going to help this team, and they're battle tested. One of the things I was going to ask you've talked about Coach McCaslin several times. What has in the games that you've done and the conversations you've had with him, going from early on losing at UCF to then kind of getting it going and getting the ball rolling a little bit, that you could share with us, right on the record, that conversation that you've had with Grant. What is he saying about this squad?
Yeah, and full disclosure, the last time I've seen Tech, it's been about a month. Like I said, that home win over Oklahoma State, a little more than a month at this point. I had them 3 times. I saw them 3 times early on in conference play. But the one thing that stuck out to me was just that first game is like our ceiling is going to be determined by how we guard the ball. It's that simple. Like, he knew everything that we're talking about. Of course he knows it, but he understands the offensive talent that he's got across the board. And yeah, you lean into that. But even getting ready for that game on New Year's Eve against UCF, he was talking about, man, we don't quite have that guy like even Joe Toussaint last year, that physical presence on the perimeter to guard the ball. And again, just the strides that you see from the guards, like we were talking about. It's not about being a shutdown defender. Like nobody's expecting anybody for Texas Tech, and again, Chance McMillan has grown so much defensively from year one to year two. We all see it. Nobody's expecting him to be Sincere Harris of West Virginia. That's unreasonable. But the fact that he cares so much, and that's the other thing that McCaslin has touched on, that like we're winning, he says, because of Chance, because of who he is. And it's not about hitting threes and the production on the floor. It is all the little things that the cameras don't catch off the floor. He says that there is no one who is harder on himself and his teammates than McMillan. It's just that intangible presence, the leadership qualities of Chance McMillan. Like this is the stuff that championship teams are made of. And you combine that with all the other pieces, like if I'm a Texas Tech fan, like I'm excited about what March can bring for this team because it is all out there for them.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking about their ceiling. I think a lot of Tech fans, and myself included, our expectation this year is second weekend, and then anything beyond that's gravy, right? Because, like to your point, who do you get matched up with, right? Who loses? Who you matched up with stylistically? But I agree they are Final Four good, and if they could get to a Final Four, they're going to be playing home games down in San Antonio. So that's exciting, and it's great to hear your commentary on Grant behind the scenes. And I don't know if this is something you get access to when you cover a game. Do you get to go watch any practices, or is that not something you get to see?
No, absolutely. And that a lot of the coaches in the Big 12 are really good about this, and we appreciate it so much. And Grant especially, we typically, take a big Monday game, Monday night, Texas Tech and Houston. We're invited to go to the game day shoot arounds. They practice for about an hour, and we get a chance to talk with Grant. And if we want to talk to a player after, they are able to arrange that. And that's really across the board in the Big 12. It helps us so much because, we all read what's out there, and that's helpful. I mean, there are excellent beat writers all across the Big 12. I think of, Nathan with the Lubbock newspaper and really does a nice job, and has for a while now. Joseph Duarte with the Houston Chronicle covering the Cougs. But beyond that, and even the access they have, the fact that it's another step, and it's not just being able to get those one-on-one conversations day of the game, to talk through the matchup and, hey, what specifically, hey, how do you handle this? Who covers who, or, whatever it may be. What are you really emphasizing? We get to observe, like, what are they emphasizing in this hour, this practice time, the day of the game? What is Grant and his staff, what are they really diving into as they work on this play? And, you have the scout team and this and that, like, and then you can bring it up during the telecast. And because it's all about trying to give that insight to the viewer and that value, like, you don't want to waste this time.
Right.
And so I love it because seeing how Grant works, some coaches are very hands-on, some are extremely hands-off, and it's a really cool mix seeing a Texas Tech practice and shoot around. Grant's absolutely involved. And on the other hand, he obviously, this has come up quite a bit in many telecasts, and I think Fran Fraschilla in particular, who is just excellent. I admire his work so much. Points this out, but what Jeff, being on Grant's staff this year, has brought, the head coaching experience, and especially from the offensive end, and seeing him work the team through different sets and actions and what they're looking for, and blowing the whistle and, let's do that again. And this is what we want here. And then Grant will chime in here and there. A really cool story that it never popped up, but I had it filed away. I asked Grant at one shoot around, can you give me a story about Darian Williams, like that kind of sums up who he is, what he's about. Like, again, it's one of those deals where we're trying to dig and, come up with something that's good to share on the air that maybe hasn't been told yet. So earlier this year, there was a situation at shoot around where, it was not going well. It was just off, wasn't smooth, had to blow the whistle a few times. Like, what is happening here? We're not communicating, we're not talking, we're getting things wrong. Like, this is not us. And Grant's lighting into the team, he says. Like, he's really getting onto them. And he's lighting up Matt Brower, the assistant coach who was kind of running this particular drill or action. And they were running defense against the scout team. And D5 speaks up, says, "Coach, this is on me. I had the calls wrong. It's on me. It won't happen again." And that stuck with Grant. Like, who speaks up? Like, it was not him calling out. They didn't identify that Darian Williams was the one who was off in this particular. It happens to everybody, by the way. Everybody, we see it all around the league. As we drop in, and get ready for games. Like, hey, you nobody's perfect. You make a mistake, coach is going to get on to you. You don't take it personally. You get it right the next rep. And for him to speak up and make sure that the head coach understands, no, even though you were barking a little bit at the assistant coach, no, my bad. That's on me. That stuck with McCaslin. It's like, okay, this guy, he's made of something really special. The character is there. And it's just like the stuff with Chance McMillan, the intangible qualities. They have the right collection of people. It's not just the talent and how they fit. This is a special group. It can be a special group in March.
Go ahead, Blake.
What I was going to say is you're right, because it feels, and I've said this on our podcast to TJ in the past, I think the last one we recorded a week or so ago was, this team feels so much like the 2019 team. They just do it in a different way, right? Whereas the 2019 team was this elite, unmovable wall on defense that could lock you off of one side of the floor. But when you'd watch them play as a fan, you just had this confidence of, even when things weren't going well in a game, they're going to figure it out, right? They're really well coached. They're going to find a way to get this done. And this team kind of gives you that same vibe. They just do it from an offensive perspective. Now, they've gotten better on the defensive end of the floor, and I know you've touched a lot on that, but you watch them play, and not including the Houston game the other night where you didn't have, obviously, D5 and McMillan. But even without them, you we're in a situation where Houston's got the ball up 3 with a minute to go, and it could have gone either way if they don't hit a big 3 late in that game. But you watch this team play, and you have this confidence watching them and this belief that they're going to figure it out. And it's really, really fun to watch as a fan. And it's been encouraging to hear you echo a lot of what we think is obviously biased Tech fans.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I don't know how you guys felt about it. I loved that when McCaslin was asked about, does this game deserve an asterisk? You
completely agree.
No, absolutely not. They beat us. They defended us well. They were the more physical team. That's how it should be. And we, if you're a fan, if you're a broadcaster, whoever, you understand the context of that game.
For sure.
And it's a situation where, I would love to see that again in Kansas City.
I would love
both
a third
teams
shot.
at full strength.
I would love a third shot at Houston. Yes, that would be so much fun.
Of course. And the fact that Kelvin Sampson even understands, from his side, the game comes with an asterisk. They were without 2 of their best players. And the fact that the game was still close, there's no moral victories. It doesn't, and that's the proper mindset if you're Texas Tech, because there was a standard, There is to fall short of that, no matter who's on the floor. You can't accept something less than that just because you're not 100%. So good for Grant in saying that publicly. Would expect nothing less from him. And by the way, so back to Final Four good and how this team is built, how while the ceiling is there and potentially, I mean, who knows? Could it be as high as 2019, even though they are very different teams? Just look at some of the best teams in college basketball this year. Look at who is projected as a 1 seed, whether it's Auburn, whether it's Duke, everybody from the SEC, it seems like beyond Duke, with Alabama or Florida, these teams that are just relentless, and they have all the firepower and the tempo that they play with. You got to keep up. You got to hit shots. I don't think that there's going to be, I would be hesitant to say that there is a team that, and I was just about to say, I'm thinking of Houston, and we know the identity is defense and rebounding. But
they can score.
They can score. The spacing, they don't get enough credit offensively. I don't think that. And Kelvin said this a few weeks ago. The fact they embrace NBA offensive principles. Sampson was in the NBA when he served his show cause, and he learned so much and brought it to Houston. And they play so well offensively, and it gets kind of swept under the rug because they just out tough you most of the time. That's how they can win. But they can score. A team that is truly only defensive minded and just doesn't have enough at the offensive end, just trying to slow the game down and win it at the end. I don't think a team like that can keep up in the tournament against the best. And so my point is, Texas Tech is well constructed this year in that mold of the team that can go up and down a little bit. And yes, when it counts, defensive mindset. Yes, you got, of course, defense wins championships, all of that. That is what unlocks the ceiling, but you got to have that firepower, and they've got it.
Yeah, guys, this is the Nation's official podcast. We are your hosts, TJ and Blake. We have the privilege of having a friend of the show, great friend of mine, Ted Emrich from ESPN on. And Ted, before I get to the league as a whole, we have gotten this deep into the interview without talking about the big man a whole lot. Give me your thoughts on JT Toppin and what he's been doing.
Man, I love his story. You bring somebody of that caliber in after he goes through the NBA draft process. You're hoping for the absolute best, and the fact that he takes a leap like this doesn't happen everywhere. We know this. You bring in somebody who produced at a certain level, and now you're in one of the elite conferences in America. It doesn't always translate right away, and it did with JT Toppin. I love the story that he was a football player in middle school before he ever took basketball seriously. Doesn't that explain so much? The fact that he, 7th grade, 8th grade, was so into football, and he goes out for the basketball team in 7th grade, and he gets cut. And it started to drive something from within him. I knew I had to get better, and he makes his 8th grade team. He starts to fall in love with basketball. That becomes his sport. Of course, he's growing all the while, and now he's 6'9", and he made the right choice, certainly. I love those origin stories with players of that level. And I mean, he's a joy to watch underneath, as hard as he works, especially on the offensive glass. Man, he's such a weapon.
Yeah, but now let's shift it over to the league as a whole now, because if you look at the standings, you're not seeing Baylor and Kansas and some of the guys that were predicted at the top to be there this year.
Kansas stinks.
It's a pretty competitive middle of the pack. As somebody that's seen the league as much as you have, what are your thoughts on the league as a whole?
And man, to piggyback off of what I just said about JT from the Mountain West to the Big 12. I mean, think of Kansas and what they paid for AJ Storr and Rylan Griffin, who were coming from power conferences, and they produced at the highest level. And it's not clicking. It's not working. There's something, I mean, that is just fascinating. And man,
it's shocking. I mean, given their history in this league, I mean, I made the joke that, they stink, but by their standards, now look, Kansas has got an incredible program, and I think a lot of programs would kill to be, what are they going to be, a 6 or 7 seed in a down year? But it's been shocking to see, to your point, it's not working.
Yeah. But we're not talking about Kansas that much, are we? It's interesting just overall, right, that it's a down year for the league, which has been the best by all metrics over the last few years. Listen, the SEC is having a historic year, and they have earned that title this year as the best. I mean, they might legit get 13 teams in the tournament. They just might. And that would be wild. But yeah, the fact that the Big 12 expands like it did, and we knew this when you add an Arizona, just what that's going to do for the league. And I would throw BYU in there as well. Now multiple years under the belt, and been to Provo 3 times this season. Pretty cool atmosphere there as well. And the fact that Tech was able to go up there and beat them there, that's not many people can do that. Are there national championship contenders? Yes, there are. Houston's a national championship contender. Absolutely. Like I said, I don't know if I can put Tech in that. I think they can make the Final Four if things break right, matchups, all of that. I do think they're that good if they hit their absolute ceiling. But yeah, it's not
Iowa State if they get healthy.
Yes, for sure. And again, back to the point about having the firepower in the backcourt when they're at full strength. Boy, if their seed really gets affected here by some losses, and again, taking one in Stillwater the other night.
No one wants to see them.
Yeah, can you imagine, right? If they drop to a certain seed line, and man, that would be that. If you're say they drop to a 3 seed or something, they've been projected as a 2 for so long. Boy, if you're a 2 seed or even the 1 seed in that region, you're thinking, boy, thanks for sticking them with us.
Yeah. Or a 4.
We have to go through them.
Yeah, if you're Auburn, if they lose a couple more because of these injuries and they're a 4, you're Auburn, you're not loving that draw in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and again, we know they have the defensive mindset and the ball pressure to go with the firepower that Jones and Gilbert and Lipsey can bring you. It's funny to say a down year for the Big 12, and it's just because it's comparing it to the last few years where it has been absolutely elite.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And before we get you out of here, Ted, there's been talk about the league. The conference has had 20 games this year. It's always a gauntlet. And I've heard rumors that as soon as next year, they may scale it back to 18 games, that this is just too big of a gauntlet for these teams to run through, that they're just beating each other up, not only on the resume, but just absolute physicality of these games. Yeah. They're beating each other up, and that by next season, they may go back down to 18. Have you heard anything? What are your thoughts on that? And just the thoughts on the gauntlet that is the Big 12?
Yeah, I have not heard that. It's funny you bring up, gauntlet and just how tough it is. So I was at BYU a couple of weeks ago when they beat Kansas State to end their 6-game win streak. And at shoot-around, we're talking with Kevin Young, who, of course, is fresh from the NBA. And, it's his first year coaching in college in 20-plus years. And he gets thrown into a 20-game Big 12 schedule. And so he's telling us, like, just mentally, subconsciously, I feel like I have been just preparing to get to the All-Star break coming from the NBA. And it was around that time, mid-February. And he's like, I almost have to catch myself. It's like, there's no such thing as the All-Star break. It is just straight through. There's not even a midweek bye. You were playing 2 games a week in one of the best conferences in America, and you're getting beaten up all along the way. And so he comes to the realization, like, I got to do something. Otherwise, we're not going to have anything left coming out of 20 games, much less the conference tournament before we get to the NCAA tournament. And he said in start of February, he really made it intentional with him and his staff. We have to lighten the load at practice. We have to become more efficient. We're getting our work done, but we have to get these guys off their feet just a little bit more, just to preserve them for every game the rest of the way. Otherwise, like, we're going to be spent. I haven't really heard it from any others, any complaints about 20 and trying to take it back to 18. Man, listen, I love that. Just as a fan, let alone an announcer who's very privileged to cover a lot of these games. I love that it starts around New Year's Eve and we are going all the way through March with 20 games. Now, with 18, can you fit in some kind of non-conference challenge like you had the SEC Big 12 deal, in late January? Not sure that would come back. It could happen. But no, man, it's bottom line. If it's 18, if it's 20, if it's whatever it happens to be, I mean, it's still just a meat grinder. And, coaches have to prepare for it no matter what.
Go ahead, DJ.
Okay. Yeah. Mike, do you have anything else for Ted before we get on out of here?
Other than a thank you, man, it's always a pleasure to have you on and get your unique perspective on things that, you get access to things that most fans don't. And, we appreciate you so much.
Oh, yes, Blake, sir. TJ, always a joy to come on with you guys. And TJ, congrats, champ. Blake, I don't know if you know the story. So TJ, yes, I'm sure it's come up on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, banners fly forever, or flags fly forever. TJ's been saying it in the chat, man. It has made his year. It's well deserved. Brilliant draft, brilliant managing, got it done, won the title with Saquon Barkley in the last pick of the first round. Congrats to you,
how
man.
about the TED analysis of my back-to-back Xavier Worthy, Jameson Williams combo that paid big dividends down the stretch?
Man, and I know nobody wants to hear about our fantasy seasons, but had to bring it up, TJ, with you being the champ. Well done, and congrats again.
Appreciate you, Ted, and thanks for hopping on. Blake and I consider you an honorary Red Raider every time you hop on here with us at the Nation.
Oh, man. Always fun being on with you guys. Can't wait to see what the rest of the season brings us with Texas Tech. They'll be fun to watch.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks again, and we'll be in touch with you soon and see how the Red Raiders can take this one out the rest of the way. Blake, how do we get out of here, bud?
Wreck 'em.
We'll talk to you guys next time on the Nation's official podcast.